So thank you again, Steph and Jackie, for coming out. This is definitely a good experience to talk to you guys who've been through this before and can definitely relate to a lot of things as we were just talking about. So why don't I just give you a hot second to introduce yourselves, and then we'll just go through what we got.
Cool. So I'll go first. Hi everybody who's watching. I'm Jackie Hynes, and I graduated as an MBT major in 2018, which is now over 2 years ago, if I'm aging myself. And I currently live in New York City as a solo singer-songwriter, recording artist, and also work in customer service and music marketing.
So, hello, I'm Steph. I graduated back in May, so probably one of the worst times to graduate. But basically right now I'm working on building connections. I'm currently working with a handful of nonprofits right now in the music industry, on top of just having a typical day job while I kind of grind away. Hopefully, working towards a career. But with COVID, I know that it's getting a little bit slower and a little bit more difficult to find a job in the industry. So I've been working with a handful of music manager nonprofits on top of just my own like connection building networking sites.
Cool. All right. So as we discussed earlier, we sent you guys a couple questions earlier before this meeting just to like get some thoughts rolling and get some ideas going. So I'll just go straight down the list. And you guys already kind of talked about this in your introduction, but the first question we had was, what field of the music industry do you work in? Do you want to start with you, Jackie?
Yeah, sure. So, I kind of would say I specialize in two major aspects, kind of like two sides to me. So I record as myself as Lynx. That's my artist name. And so I would say in that case, I specialize in songwriting, recording, production, and as Jackie Hynes, I am majorly focused in music marketing and promotion, and I currently work in customer service for Universal Music Group.
Cool. Actually, I had a question already. Do you find any, like, I know that you talked about how you have this like separation between your personal, like, well, still work, but like your artist work and then your like personal work. Is there any times where you see like a crossover of that where they like kind of help each other inadvertently?
Yeah, honestly, every single day. um, I definitely take steps as Jackie Hynes to make sure that like at least Lynx has time to write, or make sure that I have time to record as Lynx. Um, or just being a working person. There, like, that's, having a day job, there is no shame in having a day job to get to that point of where you want to be. um like I said, I moved to New York, and when I first got here, I was just solely a barista. Like, I was doing that barista life and then trying to record. And then luckily I got a break during COVID to work for Universal and kind of get back into that industry. Um, but in the beginning, when I first graduated, I was working for Telus 360, which is a Lancaster-based music venue. Um, and I was doing all of their music marketing. Went from doing a full-time internship my senior year to a part-time job. And on top of that job, I was also working another job. So there is no shame in having a job that makes sure that you can live and pay rent if you need to wherever you're living, and pushing all that extra time that you have as Lynx, or as Steph, powerhouse music business person, while you're working that other job.
Cool. All right, Steph.
I forgot that I was muted. um, so it's kind of hard to put a pin on what I do currently and what I specialize in, because I think that I dabble in a bit of everything. Like right now, I was a part of, or I'm still a part of a Facebook group, and they partnered up with an industry professional to have a A&R scout training program. So I'm doing that, and that's starting in 3 days. but A&R will help me with learning more music management skills. And I'm, working with a nonprofit right now that specializes in networking for music managers. And overall, I would just kind of say management and just kind of like operations, I guess. Um, some of you guys know me very personally, and you can see like the gears turning in my head all the time, and I always have to like put the puzzle pieces together. So I genuinely don't think that I can pinpoint myself into one area of the music industry right now. Aside, I am not a musician. I am not as nearly as talented as Jackie, but I do enjoy the legal stuff and learning more about publishing and all of that good stuff. So I don't really think I can pinpoint myself just yet because I did just graduate. I have experience in a little bit of everything and I enjoy a little bit of everything. So I really currently don't feel the need to pin myself down on one thing. And I shouldn't. That was an email, sorry. I shouldn't, simply because of COVID right now either. I don't know if I can see my skills fitting into one job specifically and saying this is the one job that will work for me right now. So I'm just trying to expand myself a little bit more in the industry overall.
Cool. Yeah, and on that point of expanding yourself, when you were like kind of like partially as a student and kind of still now, like you said, you're in that pivotal point of graduating. Was there any like not pivoting factors necessarily, but like factors that like played into a role of just being like, okay, this is kind of where I want to go in the music industry, like how you're more like management and like business focused as like opposed to somebody like Jackie that's more production focused?
I don't know necessarily. I think I really enjoyed all the classes that I participated in. It's just that when I took the higher level music business courses and I really sat down and did the work in them, I just really, really enjoyed it. Like, not to be a freaking nerd in the chat right now, but like I wrote a lot of research on copyright. It's so complex. It's so difficult to understand. But I would literally sit there and just read about the Music Modernization Act. And it's important because, it affects the singers and the songwriters and the producers. And for me, hopefully being able to represent artists in the future, it's important for me to know all this stuff and how I can better their careers. So, I just kind of started to nerd out more about the music business side of things. And that's kind of where it eventually led to. I came in wanting to do music production stuff. I came in saying, I'm going to be a studio engineer. I'm going to work in the studio. I'm going to have so much fun. I'm going to play instruments. It's going to be great. And then I got here and I enjoyed it. I loved it, but I didn't love it nearly as much as, representing an artist and seeing their career, kind of push forward, or planning the events and seeing how it affects people. Like, I loved doing that stuff. So that's kind of when I realized that I should be doing more business stuff than more like production and studio work.
Cool. I'm actually going to shift that same question to you, Jackie, because I know, like I said, and like you were saying earlier, you're more not well-rounded, but you're more like you dip your feet into both production and management a good bit. Now with something as like expansive as that, I'll ask the same question of just like, were there any like pivotal points or like decisions that you made where like you focused yourself mentally and physically, just be like, okay, this is what I want to do with myself?
Yeah, so great question. Um so when I decided I wanted to go to college, I knew that I wanted to be like a Taylor Swift and like I wanted to be the biggest I could possibly be that the world would give me that opportunity. I knew I wanted to do that. But I also knew that I wanted higher education and I wanted to know what was going on behind the soundboard. I wanted to know what labels were looking for. I wanted to know what copyright was, what careers are there. I really enjoyed like from the basic level music courses to the advanced ones. I was like in it 100%. I was like, I want to know everything about what's going on here, because I want to capitalize on that as an artist. unfortunately for the Link side of me, Jackie Hynes, I really, it's weird talking about myself in third person. I'm not gonna do that anymore. I really fell in love with the music business, like similar to Steph. I did the recording studio stuff, and I every time I got in the studio, I was like, man, I just want to be on the other side of the glass. I just want to be the recording artist. Forget that. I knew how to record myself. That's all I wanted to be able to do. Um, but the business side, I really fell in love with it, and I knew that I could do something with it. And so I got really lucky my sophomore year. I got a great internship doing music marketing with Fame House, which is part of Universal Music and is now the company I'm working for. Um, and I made some great connections with them, and they really drove me to pursue a career in music marketing or being just in the business in general, because there is space for everybody. That's one thing I've learned. If there's a big takeaway that you like highlight bold, there is space for everybody in the industry. You just have to find where you fit. It's like a big puzzle that everybody's solving, and your piece is somewhere in there. But I think that like blending like what I do as a music business person and as my songwriter side, it's definitely beneficial because then I take what I know in music marketing and music business and I apply it to like my links artistry and contacting press people, like how you send a good email, how do I make a one sheet to present links to a label, stuff like that. So
Cool.
yeah, great question.
And I love that point that you made about just like finding your place, like kind of where you fit. Because I know plenty of people that I've talked to where like they're not like their goal in life isn't to do like anything crazy. Like they found what they like and they're happy with it. Like they're not like reaching for like crazy things. They're just like, I like this part where I live right now and I'm content with that and this is where I want to be. Um and the other thing that I wanted to point out too is like how you were saying like you wanted to know, like you went all in, you wanted to know all these different aspects and stuff. And like I'm very much a big supporter of just like having like, even if it's not too much knowledge to the point where you can like do it yourself, just having like a good basic knowledge base in like multiple sects of the same like career can help you not only in like professional communication, but just like doing different things, like an artist that knows how to, like you were saying, like how to record yourself, but like saying you just know how to record yourself but you don't know how to mix or whatever, that's still one step of the process where you don't have to work around the issue of finding somebody else for it. And it makes
Exactly.
you slightly more efficient.
One tidbit I will add on to that is if anybody knows me, um, I can definitely push myself too far when it comes to wanting to take a project from like point A to the end, and I want to have like myself being the one to do it all. So there have been times where I've decided I'm gonna shoot this video, and I decide that it's gonna look best if I do it, and I know in the back of my head that it'd look better if somebody else did it. But I'm so like I've learned now that it's a lot better to give somebody else who has a proper specialty in something that you're not actually, you haven't put in your 10,000 hours yet. I've put 10,000 hours into songwriting, probably, maybe. Um, so I can do that. I know I can do that. I know I can make a good mix. I know I can, troubleshoot audio. I know how to market stuff. And that's what I'm good at. And I get excited about it more than anything. Nerding out about it. So I'll turn to Steph and be like, Steph, I have no idea what's going on with this contract I just got. Help. Because I don't know. I could get myself in a deep hole if I don't reach out to somebody like Steph. So it's important that everybody finds their like piece in that puzzle and is like, this is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy doing the most. And it doesn't matter how grand or how small it is. It all matters. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I liked that was kind of gonna be my next like segment was like if you're somebody like kind of like that alpha personality where it's just like reaching around to all these different things, like figuring out all these different things, like where's that point of just like, okay, I've done too much, I'm a little overwhelmed. And I think you brought up a great example of that, just being like, I know I'm not as confident in this, so I know people to help me in this section.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. All right, so kind of the half of this focus too was also just looking at like resumes, definitely LinkedIn, like a bunch of different things to like get yourself, like how do you get yourself out there? So the next question that we had on here was, how do you feel that LinkedIn has assisted you in building connections and or searching for jobs?
Steph, do you want to start?
Yeah. So it's huge. For me personally, it's massive, especially graduating in the middle of a global pandemic. I literally, I'm not gonna say it or anything, but I just kind of had like an oh crap type moment. Um, I was applying for jobs. I was, trying to connect with people. I was seeing what was out there, and I was like, I'm just stuck. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do anymore. All the jobs that I found online, that I've already applied for them, like I can't find any more. What do I do? And so I started to see that a lot of companies were posting webinars and, coffee chats and just all this stuff. So I was like, I'm going to sign up for a few of those. I'm going to do some of them. And it was one of the best decisions I made because so many people shared their LinkedIns and said, message me, talk to me, let's talk. And a lot of these people were, you know, people in college, people just out of college. And I was also meeting executives in certain organizations, and I connected with all of them on LinkedIn because that's how I knew how to. That's the professional way to do it. Now, there are certain things, word of mouth works best. There are certain things that work best on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not the end all be all to get a job in the music industry. Obviously, you have to know people, you have to be really keen and on the lookout for what is out there. But it's a great tool if you're trying to connect with people from all, parts of the industry. So for me, doing these, webinars and stuff, some of these things weren't going to be available to me if we didn't have COVID. They wouldn't have been online. They would have been in Nashville, in LA, or in some place that I couldn't afford to go to. And they're like, hey, we're just moving it all online. Come and join us for like $20. And so for me, it's very important. Again, though, like there are certain people who are like, I see no use in using LinkedIn just simply because I get my way around by like just sending in my resume or like knowing somebody. And that's okay too. The biggest reason I got my LinkedIn was because I was searching for jobs. I was looking at jobs and I was literally just like, I think I was a freshman. I was taking an intro to careers class and we had to look up multiple jobs and why we would be interested in them. And a lot of the jobs that I kept finding were on sites that you needed an account for. So I just made accounts for them. And then that helped me, do internship searches and eventual job searches and stuff. So I started off LinkedIn with just job searching. And then I moved it towards career building and just connecting overall. So that's my opinion. That's how my experience is so far with it.
Yeah, that's like 100% what it's for. Both like using it as a social media platform and then also as like just finding jobs is really, I believe, what it was invented for. Um, I currently use LinkedIn almost every day. I'm on there. I see like Michael Klein, you post a lot. Steph, you post a lot. I like follow both of you avidly. Um, but it's a really great tool to not only just like connect with industry professionals, but also you can learn about how people got to where they are. Because it's almost like seeing somebody's resume publicly. So people will kind of joke about it. At least when I was in college, nobody like we said, "Oh, you should get a LinkedIn," and everybody would
Yep.
laugh about it.
People joked about it
When
too.
yeah, when we're sitting here telling you to get on LinkedIn, it is like do it. Get on it. Just post your experience. If there's a regret I have in college regarding LinkedIn, it would be I did a lot of projects that I can't remember off the top of my head. I didn't write them down. I just did them. You know, I volunteered for a certain event, or I went to this meeting, I learned this cool thing, or I was a part of this organization team and did this. And I didn't write it down, and I wish I could go back and just put on LinkedIn that I did this cool thing, or I took a video, or I took a picture, and just post it, because it'll be there forever, like Facebook. And then when you're my age, like 24, oh god, I'm 24. When you turn 24 and you look at your resume, you have the jobs you've worked, but all that in between stuff that is so important, that builds to those big positions, I think people will be really happy with themselves to see how they got to those points. And also, like, you can then compare your steps to somebody who has the job you want. So if you want to be CEO of Sony's distribution, you can go to, you know, Bill's page and see, oh, this is what he did when he was an intern back in, 2000, that kind of thing. So LinkedIn is a very crucial part of any business industry, music or not. There's people everywhere. And as an artist, I found that I get connected to, like, I got a message from a chiropractic company the other day who I had posted something and they liked what I did. So you'll see, like, different walks of life connect with you in a really cool way that can actually impact your life in a very positive way.
Cool. Yeah, and I see myself like relating to that kind of just about like what you were saying about seeing somebody's story. Like that's something I definitely struggle with. Like I find it's hard for me to find the motivation to like post things where cuz like I'll look at it and I'm just like, no, that's dumb. I'm not going to say that. But at the same, like if I get a job or something, I'll be like, oh, I worked here for a little bit. Like the inside of my brain would just be like, no, don't say that. That's dumb. But the other half of me is just like, no, like you were saying, this is like an important part of my story, and something like if somebody looks at your account and having that one post there versus having nothing at all makes you look like twice as good. But
Exactly, but it also kind of piggybacks to what we were saying earlier in the conversation about, like, oh, if you're kind of good at these little things, like if I'm really good at writing, I could say, oh, I went to a great writing workshop today. Even though it was only half, it's a writing workshop I went to, and now if one day I decide that I, want to work for a copywriter company, they can go back and see, oh, I did a writing workshop.
I think the
That
cool
kind
thing
of
about LinkedIn is that, you can put in your internships, your jobs, your skills, all that stuff. They have badges and skill badges. So if you know that you're good at Excel, like all these jobs that I'm applying to are saying you must be proficient in Excel. You must be proficient in X, Y, and Z. So I took those quizzes on LinkedIn to show them that I am legit proficient in these skills. And that goes a long way because you can say, hey, I'm good at this, but what is your definition of proficient to another person? On top of that, what Jackie was saying too, you can put it in LinkedIn saying, like, so it's right there in front of the person who's viewing your profile, and it can say, I did this back in 2017. I did this back in 2018. Or you could just simply make a post. Like today, it was the weirdest thing for me to say, but like, I enjoy making playlists. I've been making this new one that highlights artists who are releasing new music, and it's super fun. It's really small right now because I literally started it at the end of August. It's going to take time, but I enjoy doing it and I like helping artists. So I posted about it on my LinkedIn. I didn't make a full-fledged like section on my LinkedIn profile, but I made a direct post for it and saying, hey guys, this is what I'm doing. So again, what Jackie was saying, if an employer looks back on that, they're like, that's pretty innovative. Like that's something that I haven't seen yet. I want to talk to them more about that in that interview, or like something like that. They use the content that you put out there to ask you more questions, to learn more about you. So the more you give them on LinkedIn And the more that they're able to find, even anywhere, honestly, you know, the better. It feels so weird at first to be like, it. LinkedIn is like kind of like a Facebook, where you post and you talk about yourself and all that stuff, whatever, but you talk about it in a professional way, which I think is very weird, and it was very odd for me at first. But now I'm a lot more comfortable with it because I know that in the long run, people can see that kind of stuff, and people will see the content that I'm making and the things that I'm doing and be like, ah, that's very cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, that was
I
something
totally
that got me.
agree that like LinkedIn is very much like Facebook, but like more professional. And I actually kind of want to piggyback off of that and ask if you guys want to touch on sort of like LinkedIn etiquette and how you should approach people on LinkedIn. Maybe some things that have worked for you or some things that haven't quite gone right. Um, if either of you have anything to share on that.
Jackie, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think treat it like you're sending a professional email. It will come across a lot better because it is a professional site. This isn't where you go, "Hey John, how's it going? I was wondering if you knew of a job at Sony. I need a job." That's not gonna get you anywhere. It's better if you would write, "Hi John, my name is Jackie, and I really," or I'm writing a professional email off the top of my head. Let's see. "Hi John, I'm Jackie, and I noticed on your profile you have this. I'm very interested in that, and I am currently I'm looking for a position similar to it. You don't want to take his job, but you're interested to know what he does, so that way you know how to get to that point." And so write it like a professional email. I would also say, like, do your research on what people are doing, so that way they don't you're not bombarding them with just a question or like, "Give me, give me, give me." You want to give them something back too, you know?
Yes, literally all of what Jackie said. Yes. Like, I cannot emphasize enough that it is still a professional website. Um, I've been able to connect with a lot of awesome people from all over the world because of a lot of these webinars and like live streams and stuff that I've watched or I've been a part of. And some of the people are not very professional on it. And you can kind of tell with their language towards others. You get your standard like, "Congrats on the new position," or "Great job on this thing," and that's what it's like there for. You see people post and there's comments, whatever. But there are just some things out there, and I'm like, this is not for LinkedIn. I was like, you should have saved that one for the drafts. I like, honestly, I did not make this mistake on LinkedIn, but I definitely posted it in another group that I'm a part of. And basically, I was asking about more information on a certain aspect of the music industry. And I got a lot of emails or responses back. And I started to ask them questions because they said, feel free to respond with that. And I should have known that in that moment, I should have said, let's have a virtual coffee instead of asking them one or two questions. It's a simple mistake, but it was something that I learned immediately right off the bat that I should not have done. LinkedIn is great for making like a connection, a two-way connection, but you have to maintain that two-way connection if you want it to still be there later on in the future. So I can say that I have hundreds of connections on LinkedIn, but do I actually know what's going on in every person's lives? No. So if you're interested in, paving your way in one specific part of the industry, you really got to work for it and you really got to maintain those relationships. LinkedIn is there to connect you, not maintain. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you can meet all the people you want and say you have all those connections, but if you're not solidifying those relationships with the professionals that are doing what you want to be doing or are actively in the industry you want to be in, then it's not really helpful. It's more just like a mask over what you could actually be pursuing.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, and I like that point where that you mentioned, Steph, of just about like it's there to make the connection, but you need to continue that, because like talking back and forth with somebody over an email is one, like it's a, you get a different type of, not sensation, but like an environmental feel, like the situation feels different versus like meeting, like you said, meeting somebody on like a Zoom call and actually like having a conversation is like entirely different for connecting with somebody. But yeah. All right, cool. Anybody have anything else on that? Cool. All right, so kind of tied in with LinkedIn. We kind of touched on this a hot second. Um, but our next little bit was looking at resumes. So, do you have any tips on writing a resume? And if you have any examples, feel free. But yeah, more just like stuff that we didn't learn. Like you've learned this at like school, but then you've learned that like something else works better or something like that.
So, actively job searching, especially right now during the pandemic, is really difficult. Um, I was doing it. Steph, you mentioned you were doing it. It is difficult, and it's difficult outside of this situation as well. It's not an easy thing to write a bunch of things about yourself that you mentally have gone through and you know what it looks like on paper. And you have one page to kind of put all of that experience that you've done and you've worked really hard for onto one sheet of paper. That sounds crazy. Um, so you have to pick your words really carefully and how you want to describe certain positions you've had, or um, what bullet points you think are most important. And a big part of, I would say, resume building is starting with either a template or a layout that you like. Something that you think, if you don't have that much experience, pick a layout that has a lot of great visual space. Maybe you have a nice picture of your face. You're using a nice, like maybe one color. Maybe it's just black and white, but maybe just pick one color, and that's eye catching. And then you can fill in that space with your education, projects you've done, things you like to do. A GPA is definitely a good thing to have if you're fresh out of college. I still have my GPA on mine just because I'm proud of it and I worked hard for it. Um, and then I would recommend putting down like the most important things you did at each position. Um, the key thing about a resume, though, and I would like definitely mark this down, is you're gonna change it a million times. Depending on what job you're applying for, you're going to change your resume like at least 2 or 3 times regarding different positions. Um, I personally just looked at my resume preparing for this Zoom meeting earlier today, and the resume that I had coming to New York just a year ago is completely different than the resume that I've been submitting. I have so much less experience. Um, I've even worded things a lot better. And I actually, going back to what we were talking, I just point. Um, Using alum great. I was able to connect with a lot of really great people through the Millersville Alumni Association, and people who are connected on LinkedIn. And I would ask them questions about the job they're working at. Um, and I met a really great friend now. His name is Brad. He works at Spotify. We both went to Millersville 2 years apart. And I asked him what he thought of my resume. And he gave me some really great pointers on how to make it better. And so we fixed my bullet points. We changed the hierarchy of what's important to show. I put a better picture up there, and the information that I have presented is a lot better than what it was. And so I think it's just kind of maintaining like a fresh look at what's going on and making sure that the job you're applying for matches what your resume is. Because like we all said and we've been kind of talking about a lot, is that we have multiple things we're interested, multiple skills, and you can take them and use them in a very smart way for any position. So, like, I have music marketing in my resume, but I'm working for a customer service representative position at Universal, which are two very different things. So I tailored my resume with what experience I do have in music marketing to match the customer service position, and then able to get the job through that. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, again, like Jackie hit all the points. Have multiple resumes, because I do. Um, there are certain jobs that I'm interested in that I know do not care about certain experiences that I've had. There are other jobs that I know if I include it, it'll show a lot more leadership and initiative. Um, if something's in the past, use, certain wording to say that this is something that I experienced in the past. Um, if you're doing something now, include it. My resume from May is not the same as what it was like today. Or it's not, the template is the same, but the way that it looks and the way that I've presented myself is very different. I did the same thing, Jackie. I connected with Brad and we talked, and I sent him my resume like a year or two ago, and we just talked about it, and we went back and forth on LinkedIn about things that I can improve about it. I don't know what your opinion on this, Jackie, either is, but I enjoy using Canva. They have templates on there. Canva is so much easier to personalize and edit your resume than doing it in a Word document. I've tried to make a Word document work, and the way that the spacing and the things that you need to fit in one page and make it look nice and just symmetrical does not compute with Word.
Yeah,
So
Canva all the way. I use Canva in my resume. I have about 10 different templates for it within Canva. Well, they're all the same template, but they're different versions of the
yes,
template. And I'll mark one like, I have one that's just customer service. I have one that's like pre-COVID, one that's like now, like recently updated, one that's just for marketing, one that's for audio production. Any experience I have, there's a resume for it. But yeah, definitely Canva.
So definitely try that out. And yeah, reach out to alumni. Like, I love helping people. I truly enjoy it. So, like, my DMs are always open if you need help with resumes and stuff. I mean, I've sent my fair share. But, you never know what exactly works until you say, yes, this is what's clicking for me. Because what might work for me will not work for somebody else. Your resume basically needs to show your job experience, why you're qualified for the job, and also your personality. So how do you include all of that in one piece of paper or one page? You just gotta keep failing until you find what works. And that's basically how the music industry or any industry is. You just keep failing until you find something that works.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I think it's also good to note too, in the job market right now, and again, this goes for any industry that you're in. You have people who are known as like the hiring managers, or they're the HR person who their job is to post the position online. We're now in the 21st century, we're in 2020, so we're all looking for jobs on the internet. Nobody's going to a bulletin board and pulling down a little tab and you call a number. It's all on the internet. So how does a PDF that you make get seen by that hiring manager? And the trick is it doesn't get seen unless you kind of tell the system to do so. And a great way of doing that is almost tricking the application by either typing out your templated resume into full text into either your note app or your Word document, and you put it into the application as well. So if most applications will ask for your resume, which you want to put that nice PDF you worked on, nice, crisp, high quality, and then also include that Word document, because that's going to tell the computer when the HR person goes through, it's going to show all of those descriptions of what you've done in full text. It's going to highlight your resume. instead of the system going through and trying to read a PDF. It sounds weird. I've learned a lot from actually using TikTok in terms of finding resume things. So if you're on business TikTok, or like Office Depot TikTok kind of has some too, you can like really find like a niche in terms of what people are using, and learning about, like, there are a lot of hiring managers that are on TikTok that are saying, this is what I look for, or these are the interview questions that I will ask. So use those resources. But yeah, I guess a big takeaway I've had recently is definitely including text as well as the PDF.
Cool. I like the TikTok point. That was very interesting. Because I keep forgetting, because who else tried that, where they had like the business like functions. Doesn't like a dating app, doesn't Bumble have that, where it's like they have like a business function on something like where you would not expect to see that like focus. You see it, and then some people that actually use that niche actually find it really helpful. And it's like, it's weird, but it's kind of interesting to like see how that like plays out. But anyway, I digress. So the last question we had was based on job interviews. So like we were talking about, this can be like COVID, pre-COVID, doesn't matter. Do you have any, I guess, experiences or just any like good tips, like when you get to that point where you're already past like the resume section, you're in that interview of just like do or die? How did that go for you guys?
Okay, so I've done many an interview. It is stressful every time, I will say. That feeling in your stomach never goes away, because what ends up happening is, as you advance in your career, you're still looking for something slightly bigger. That next step, you're proving yourself. It's scary. But that's okay. Everybody feels that way. So don't be scared. It's just you're having a conversation with somebody. Normally, what happens, at least in my experience, is you have a phone call. That's like the very first step. The first thing they ever do is they'll send you an email and they'll say, hey, we want to talk to you. When are you available? They all have different ways of doing this. Some have a calendar. You just pinpoint when you're available in the next few days. My like 2 cents on that is give them, like, if you can, do either like definitely the next day or the day after, because the faster you can get in their ear, the better, because somebody else is going to take your spot. So if you can interview the next day on the phone, do it. I've never had an interview where they've skipped the phone call part. There's always a phone call before I go see them physically. So during that phone call, normally they ask a lot of questions. They ask, how did you hear about us? This is a great way for them to get to know, one, how you like take in media. Like if you saw it on LinkedIn, great, because that means that what they're doing is working. If you heard it by word of mouth, that's great too, because it means that you might know somebody that knows somebody that knows them. That's really good too. They'll also ask you like what your experience is, what makes you think that you're qualified for the position, where you see yourself in 5 years. That's a big question, because if you tell them that you want to be working for their position in 5 years, then they know you're there for the long run. You're interested. You're not going to just go through all this legwork and then leave them, you know? So the questions they ask, normally you can ask them back. I've failed this many times. Normally what happens is I go through an interview, I've written down some questions, and my questions end up being so basic and small-minded that by the time that part comes up and they say, do you have any questions? I'm the one that goes, oh, you answered all of mine. Okay. And then that's the end of the conversation, and then I never get a call back, and I'm scratching my head like, why didn't they call me back? I'm so qualified. You know, I might be qualified, but to them, I didn't have anything else. There was no other question I could have ever asked them. So I prepare extra questions now. And a lot of those questions, like I said, if they say, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You can then piggyback off that and say, where's the company going to be in 5 years? I want to know what my position is going to look like. Am I going to be, and that normally leads them to, you know, is there a fast track to, you know, promotion? Do you think in 5 years I'll be promoted, kind of a thing? So yeah, I would just say definitely prepare a lot of questions, like more questions than you think, because you don't want to be the person like myself in the past where I've sat there and been, I don't have any questions for you, because that's a big red flag saying you're not as interested as somebody else. So have questions. Don't be nervous. I know that's hard. Don't be nervous. It's just a conversation. Oh yeah, when you go in for a physical interview, that's another point. When you go in for the physical interview, dress nice. Dress for the job. If it's a live sound gig, wear all black. You can have your keychain, you know, the thing that you wear on your belt. Like, you can do that. Like, dress with your steel-toed boots. Like, do it. Recording engineer, you can wear jeans, whatever. Especially in music, I have, every time I go to get ready for an interview that's in person, I've overdressed and I walk out feeling like I'm overdressed. You will be surprised when you go in and everybody is wearing jeans and a t-shirt, even at like the biggest record label. It is surprising. So dress up a little bit because you want to show that you care, but you do not need to go in full, you know, black tie. Yeah. So yeah, that's my interview tips.
I think for me, it's a little bit unique. One, because I've been on the other side of, I've been interviewing people on top of being interviewed myself. And also during COVID, it's been very interesting. Again, phone call, you don't miss it. You start off with a phone call and then you might move to like a video call instead, and instead of like being in person. And I've had a handful of phone call interviews and, you know, video interviews. For me personally, I know that it's really funny. Actually, like, dress up for your Zoom call interview or your video chat interview, but like head to toe. Do not just like put on the shirt and then wear sweatpants underneath. Like, you want to feel good about yourself and professional about yourself from head to toe. And for me, like, I almost did this. I was wearing leggings with like a dress shirt, and then I was like, I feel stupid. I feel stupid. So I put on dress pants. They weren't going to see it, but I put on dress pants so that I felt like a professional and I felt professionally dressed. I've just had some weird experiences with phone calls. I'm not going to lie. It was supposed to be an introductory video chat at first, and then I got an email saying, I'm just going to call you right now. And then I heard the like turn signal clicker, and I realized that the person was in their car driving, interviewing me on the phone. That's how I got interviewed for a job over the summer. I did not feel like the job was the right fit for me, so obviously I'm not doing it right now. But, you know, that's how she was doing the interview. You never know. I had another interview at an agency who was doing, they weren't hiring for their entry-level positions because obviously with the entertainment industry, there's none of that right now. But they were, you know, preemptively interviewing recent college graduates for their training program. And, you know, I had one of their pre-screens. She called me and she asked me the same question, you know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, I would like to be managing people. I would like to help artists, you know, with their careers and stuff. But that's me in 5 years. And then she was like, do you have any questions? And I'm like, how is this company going to look after COVID? Like, what is going to happen when you guys are able to go back into the offices? And she was like, I don't know. And that was it. So it's an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting conversation. You can always find ways to turn what they asked you into a question that you can ask them. So that's again, like, just kind of piggybacking off of Jackie. In college, I worked in admissions. I was a part of the tour guide team, or the Sharp team, on campus. I was a lead student ambassador, which basically meant that I had my own team of tour guides that I had the opportunity to train and work with. And whenever something went wrong, I handled it during an admissions event. Or, I kept, Excel sheets with information about all of my staff, to make sure that, they're doing the trainings properly. They're up to date with everything that they need. It's a lot of admin work. Another thing that I did was I interviewed people, because if they wanted to be on my team, if they wanted to be on the admissions team in general, I had to be the one to interview them. And it was very interesting being on the other side, because I was a lot more understanding of their nerves, because I was in their shoes multiple times to get to that position. Whereas other people might be like, I didn't really like, how they spoke about this. And I was like, they were nervous. They were nervous. Let them be. So when I was interviewing people, that was when I kind of realized that any question that I would ask could be turned on me. There were questions about, if a parent made a comment to the tour guide and it was inappropriate, how would you react? And, the person interviewing would respond, and then they're like, well, how would you guys respond to a person who was inappropriate to you? Or like something like that. Or like, how would admissions handle this situation? So yeah, definitely, like, from somebody like who has interviewed a lot of people, they're rooting for you, but they also have to sift through dozens and dozens and probably hundreds of other applications. So be patient, and just really be yourself, because you can't be somebody else. You have to really like lay out all your skills and your like just your whole personality right on the table in that phone call, in that video call, in that in-person, hopefully at some point, interview. But yeah, that's I haven't had many job interviews because of COVID, but I've had a handful.
Well, I think as well, like in college, I interviewed for so many internships, so many. That is a great way to get you, well,
Practice.
not just on campus jobs. If you get an on campus job, we're going to interview for it. Think of each of those steps in the back of your head. Think, this is what it's going to feel like when I'm interviewing, 4 or 5 years from now for that first job. That feeling's going to be the same, but it's going to actually impact your life in a really great way. It always does. And so don't think of each interview, if you don't get the job, it's not a failure. It's a stepping stone to the next interview. It's actually going to be the one that you're going to nail, and that's the job that's actually meant for you. You have to think about it that way. But
Everything's a learning experience.
yeah, exactly. But I had done, you talk about being in a car. It was tough because I did an interview for like this Sony ATV Fly scholarship thing. And I was one of the last 2 people to be like, I almost got it. It was a remote Sony internship. I was so excited. And I had to do the interview in my car because there was literally nowhere else I could go on campus. It was in the middle of a school day, and it was the quietest place I could think of that wasn't the bathroom. So I just ended up doing the interview in my car. And I don't think that's the reason I didn't get it. It probably was the fact that I didn't have any questions. But it definitely was like an experience, like you said, Steph. They all are a great experience, and you need to think of it as that. The best you can do is just be prepared to your best ability and go in there, like Steph said, as being your full self. And a lot of the time they'll ask you to elaborate on your experiences, whether it's on your resume or not. They want to hear from you what those things on the paper are. So you could go in depth about the last thing you just did that was a really great project, or what you did during MMP throughout the year. Those are great experiences that nobody else will have other than you, and you have to think about it that way. So nobody else is like you who has the experiences that you do, and that's a huge asset.
Cool. Yeah, I like that point about, again, all these points about just like you are you. There is no like cut and dry thing that'll work for everybody. Like you just have to be yourself and show, because ultimately that is what people see and be like, okay, we want this person or we don't, because they're literally just judging your personality, not only your skills, but they're just looking at you as a person and be like, if you're not coming off as like a decent person, they're gonna be like, I don't want to work with this person. And it's that same relation where it's just like, if you don't get like that personality trait across, then it's just like that might be the deciding factor.
Yeah, I definitely think the more of a conversation you can make the job interview seem, the more relaxed you both are, and it's more or less just like, oh, you're definitely qualified for this. I want to know who you are as a human being and how you'll be on the team. So the more relaxed and the more of a conversation it is, rather than just here's a question, answer it. Here's a question, answer it. The better it becomes.
Yeah, definitely like finding, and like you were saying like way back ago, like somebody who somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, like those connections. Like in some of my interviews that I've gone through, I feel like just like knowing somebody has gotten me further than some of my skill. Like I got a job one time. It's like I'm trying to get it back, but then COVID. So I got this job at this theater, and I wasn't exactly qualified for it because I've never really done like theater specific sound stuff before. I've done sound stuff, but not theater based. Um, so I wasn't exactly qualified, but I knew. So it was in the area, and I knew like a bunch of high school teachers that were all friends with the guy that was interviewing me. And I think it was mainly that let me get that job, because they were super like really good friends. And it was just such a weird like, not like revelation, but just like kind of just like, holy crap, like sometimes this connection really matters more than what I have sometimes. And like even though I can learn from it, I may or may not have just gotten this just because of the connection alone. But yeah. All right, cool. Anybody have any other questions?
I have a question. Where maybe you guys talked about this, maybe I missed it, but like what do you think is the best medium for like job searching, like finding somewhere to work?
Okay, so I've done a lot of different websites. The two main ones you'll come across when you Google search music jobs are through LinkedIn or Indeed.com. If you are, some of your professors might tell you to go on entertainmentcareers.net. That website is great for looking at jobs, but I will tell you right off the bat, you don't have to pay for the service. I did it. I tried it. There is nothing there at the beginner level. Those are like for the top tier. I am a vice president. I need a job kind of a thing. That's where they go. That is not for entry level. So you're better off shooting for anything on LinkedIn or Indeed. Sometimes Facebook even has positions, or if you look closely enough, there are some people who are posting about like, hey, my company needs somebody to help with this. And that's a great way to get a starting position until you can find the job you're looking for. I found myself in a scary place where I was moving to New York and I just needed a job to pay rent until I could find the right job. And that's what I did. I just Googled certain things and found, I think it was through LinkedIn actually, but most of the opportunities I've ever gotten have been through LinkedIn or Indeed.com.
Yep.
So
I tried the entertainment, what is it called? The entertainment something.net. I did it for like a month, and I noticed that all of the jobs that were already posted on either Indeed or LinkedIn were on this website. There were some that were different, but it did not outweigh the fact that it cost me like $5 for the month or something like that. It was
thanks.
fun.
You got $10 out of us. Look at that.
Yeah.
Don't give them any money. You don't need to do it.
No, you really don't. It's not worth it. Indeed is really good. That I found like companies that I wouldn't necessarily find on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is good for like a lot of bigger companies. And at the end of the day, they're all going to lead you to the same website, their careers page on their own website. So you can, if you know that you're interested in a specific company, bookmark their careers page and just check every couple of like a week, every week, or like every couple of weeks, something, just like maintain and look and say, hey, do my skills fit into this department? Should I be looking at a like different section or whatever? What internships are finally being posted? Yeah, definitely look at either the company's page or Indeed and LinkedIn. Those are like my top. It's very weird trying to navigate when you first start. Like I've gotten a handful of questions of like, so can how do you write your how do you like show me the jobs that you've applied for? And I was like, one, personal. Like I'm not gonna show you how I do everything, but I'll give you the tools in order for you to build whatever you need to build. Like my thing is going to be different from your thing, you know? I might be building a birdhouse and you'll be building something completely different. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to make an analogy, it totally didn't work. But it's true, you know, my tools are going to be different from yours. Build your own thing. Here are some tools that I have that are the same. You can borrow them for a little bit and then find your own.
Well, I think the cool thing about Indeed too is it gives you the option. Another great feature that LinkedIn has is when you apply to jobs, you can use your LinkedIn profile as your resume.
It's like a resume.
Yeah. So Indeed also lets you do that. Most job postings will actually say, would you like to use your LinkedIn as your resume? Which is a great way because then it shows you all of those little things you did that you post in your feed, and they can see what connections you have in the industry too.
Indeed does something similar, but it's not as user friendly as LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You have to like input it, but like it's not as similar of like posting and stuff. It's literally just like jobs and then your profile, and those are the two things there. It's not like a social media type site.
Exactly. Again, I'm living here in New York, and there's another great site here. If anybody ever decides to move to New York, there's a cool site called Built in New York City, and they post jobs for more startups and stuff like that, but smaller companies that are looking for specialized people working. So it's also worth a shot. I'm sure Philly has something similar. Most places probably do, I'm guessing. I know there wasn't ever one in Lancaster though, but probably more major cities, depending on where you move to, might. So it's worth a shot to look at those as well. But great question, Estelle. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Anybody have any more questions?
Any other questions?
No? All right.
I
Cool.
know you both kind of mentioned earlier about how LinkedIn can be a good place to sort of scroll back in time and see the various projects that you've worked on. I was just wondering if you have any tips for other ways to keep track of what you've done in a way that you can bring it into an interview and really like use that to brag about yourself. Because I know it's easy for things to just kind of get lost in the ether if you're not keeping track of them. So any tips on how to just like log your successes and make them sound really good?
I think that in terms of like, it kind of goes back to having like a million different kinds of resumes. Um, but if they're asking for a certain experience you have in a specific topic, like if they say, this is a common question of, tell me about a time when you came across this kind of situation. And then you're kind of sitting there like, oh my god, when did I ever have to deal with a crowd of 500 people and when the lights go out? And it's important to kind of, I don't know, I'm a big like fan of the Notes app. I write everything in the Notes app, but maybe come up with like a system, even if it's like a checklist, and you can date when you did something that's in your field or something that could benefit you later on. And then before that interview, if you think that it'd be beneficial to just scroll through and see what those things were. Maybe you could flag a couple and be like, okay, when I go to this interview, I want to talk about when I was in this MMP meeting and we recorded this band, and that'll be useful to me, kind of a deal.
Yeah, I do something very similar. I also am a hoarder of all of my cover letters and resumes and all of that stuff. So I can kind of see things that I've included in the past on top of the things that I don't include anymore. Um, and just kind of like watch the progress of not only how I've designed my resumes and how I perceive myself as a professional in the music industry, but, you know, there are certain things that I just don't include in my resume anymore that don't serve me, but could be useful to talk about as a talking point in an interview. You know, what Jackie was kind of saying, like, I've gotten multiple times the same question from different companies of, name a time that you had a difficult situation and how did you handle it?
Yeah.
I could literally name dozens of difficult times. Like, there's so many of them. But, you know, do you want one from my freshman year of college? Do you want one from that I experienced when I was in, you know, high school, or, you know, something like that? You could make it very personal. You know, for example, a question could be, name a time that you had to work with a difficult person. How did you handle it? Or name a difficult situation that you had to handle and work under pressure. Those little differences in the question can greatly change your response. So definitely just kind of, one, remembering those situations. Again, the notes app, if you're a forgetful person, do that. I remember very stressful situations because it's just ingrained in my brain. So that question is very easy for me in interviews, but everything else just kind of goes out the window. So I make notes too. And I say, these are some key points that I want to highlight about myself. Hopefully those questions get asked because that's what I have in my head right now. Yeah, I have a whole folder in my cloud under, it's literally called important stuff. And then one is like college, and it has all 4 years, all of my classes, all of that stuff just built into it to kind of highlight all the like different things that I've done. And then now I have a career one where it's just the work that I've been doing currently with certain nonprofits and whatnot. So, you know, just, you'll find what works best for you. But, you know, I tend to just kind of keep things in the back of my head, or I just hoard it in my files.
I think it's a good thing too. Like, if you think about going into like a physical interview, on the phone it's easy because you could have like your laptop in front of you or physical papers. You could have your resume in front of you, the job thing, and then any notes you have that you want to ask them. But going into a physical interview is scary because I did this a lot. Is I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I need to remember everything. In my head, I need to walk in there with nothing, and they're asking me questions, and I'm just like an open book. But you have to think of it almost more like a meeting. And this was something that I was told by a close friend of mine. It was like, you can go in there with papers. They have papers in front of them asking you questions. You can go in there with a whole binder of stuff and be like, you're about to make my life better. I want to ask you all these questions, you know? I want to know, like, this is who I am, this is my life, and I want to work for you. So you can go in there with your own papers and your own things to help you highlight yourself in the best way. And if that's what's going to help you, then you can do that. So I don't think there's any like shame either in going in with a notepad of past history, things that you've done that you want to make sure that they know about.
It's also good in those interviews too to make notes of the expectations that they have. Like, I've had for the one, like the training program, and on top of this like other job that I was interviewing for, they both told me the salaries. They told me their expectations, they told me their hours, they told me their salaries, all that stuff. And I literally was just sitting at my table like scribbling it all down because I needed to know. It's important information. You know, if I'm moving to a different state for it, I got to know how to budget for all of that. And so do not feel ashamed about having a little notepad or a post-it out and start writing notes, because all the information that they're telling you is equally as important as the information that you're telling them.
Exactly, and it's going to make you look like you care enough to write it down too, which you do care enough. So
Exactly.
great question, Michael.
Thanks. Those were awesome answers. Thank you.
Yeah.
These are really great. All right, anybody else have anything? All right, cool. Well, yeah. Well, thank you, Steph and Jackie, for coming. This was really helpful. Um, I was surprised I had a lot of good. I'm surprised I had questions. But yeah, no, I think this was definitely helpful for everybody.